The following presentation was recorded live in Kansas City, Missouri for CALLERLAB's 23rd Annual Convention. This is tape number 27, an open forum on alternative dance programs, a debate.
In the back in here, you can come on up in front and take a seat. Anybody, raise your hand if you've got a spare seat by you so that they'll know that there are some spare seats up in here in front. Those of you sitting on the floor and standing around the back have a couple spots. Come on in and join us. Proves to be an exciting session. Yes. Are we ready? This is the program entitled Alternative Dance Programs, I guess we want to call it. I prefer to think of it as a program debate, 1996. Okay? We going to turn it on, or are we started? All right, let's start. All right, my name is Mike Seaserm. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad you're here. We have, as our panelist or our debate team here today, we have Mr. Jerry Story from Mission, Texas. Nice hand for Jerry. Mr. John Jones from Arlington, Texas. Is there any reason why we have Texas here? Is this? Is it? He's not a true Texan. Well, we're all square dance callers around here, so let's. I'd like to make a few opening statements there. As most of you know, the debate about square dance programs has been going on for many years. When callers first met in 1971 to discuss the possibility of forming an organization like CALLERLAB, square dance programs were the main topic on the agenda. In the early 1980s, when it was obvious that many were not using our programs as intended, CALLERLAB, with an ad hoc committee, and many of you will probably remember that ad hoc committee, came up with a 25-week Learn to Dance program. And after using that program on an experimental basis for a couple years, CALLERLAB, by majority vote, back in 1988, I believe that was the Reno Convention, decided to keep its former system. Ooh. Is that good? 2715, There we go. The powers that be. That's right. We start talking controversy and whoa, buddy, huh? Okay. Anyway, I believe that was about the 1988 convention. Decided to return to its former system or keep its former system. But the discussions didn't go away. And as many of you know, in the early 1990s, ACA was formed and later developed another version of the old 25-week program called square dancing. They encouraged square dancers and their associations, and their approach was to encourage square dancers and the square dance associations to make the decisions on the programs and on what we wanted to dance. This has not happened, and it has only created more confusion. In 1993, the CALLERLAB Board of Governors tried to do a joint survey with ACA to poll their members and ours about square dancing and its programs. ACA declined to participate in that survey, but we hired a professional market research firm and polled our members. And here's what we found. It's been a couple of years, so some of you might want to just kind of update on some of the actual program or the actual poll that was taken of our members. One of the questions was, how satisfied with the CALLERLAB program structure? Well, the way that question was worded, over 70% said they were somewhat or very satisfied. Less than 20% said they were somewhat or very dissatisfied. But when we asked further, do you agree or disagree that the CALLERLAB programs are fine as they are? Well, only 51% somewhat or strongly agreed. 36% somewhat or strongly disagreed. We asked also, should there be a single list of calls for every caller to teach the entry program into square dancing? 82% said yes, and only 11% said no. When we specifically asked what program is taught as the entry program for new dancers in your area, these were the statistics. 24% said the basic program was the entry program for their new dancers. 48% said mainstream, and 15% said plus. In some areas, as high as 28% said that plus was their entry program for new dancers, and overseas in Canada, only 1% taught plus as their entry level or entry program, and 54% taught the basic program as the destination for their new dancers overseas in Canada. So it was obvious to us that it varies all over the world as what destination do your new dancers go to. We also asked how many agreed with the following statement: do not make any changes, the programs are fine and accepted and working as they are. 54% somewhat or strongly agreed, 33% somewhat or strongly opposed. But when we asked them what was the most, if the most popular basic, mainstream, and plus calls should be combined into a single program, 41% somewhat or strongly agreed with that statement, and 51% strongly or somewhat opposed. The Board of Governors saw at that time that the majority of CALLERLAB members seemed to support our present system, but we also realized that as an organization, we were definitely divided. This year's Executive Committee proposed a session like this to discuss the impact that our dance programs have had on the success of square dancing and to discuss the issue in an open forum type debate. Jerry Story is going to discuss a proposal to restructure the programs. John Jones has been asked to provide a rebuttal from the perspective of our present system. This debate is not going to focus on the specific details of how we're going to accomplish these changes, but it's going to consider whether the change would have a positive effect in the long run, or whether we need to utilize our present system better. I will ask 6 questions. Each will be directed to only one speaker, with the other speaker offering a rebuttal. The time that's going to be allotted to each question is 5 minutes, and we'll stick to that time limit exactly, 5 minutes. The rebuttal will be no more than 4 minutes. After all the questions are answered and the rebuttals are complete, then I'll recognize questions and comments from the floor. The time allotted to floor speakers will once again be no more than 4 minutes. Okay? Are there any questions? Now we're going to adhere strictly to those time limits so that we don't get bogged down in discussions about particular things. And we recognize that there's many callers. I guess I should open up with a statement that we recognize that many callers and leaders in this dance activity feel that we have a problem. The problem is simply that there's too many calls to teach in too short of a time for our new dancers to become recreational or club dancers. The first question I'd like to ask Jerry, how do you propose that we solve this problem? 5 minutes.
One set of calls may be the answer. I said may be the answer to help guide us into the 21st century. That's what we're here to find out. I happen to feel that one level should be the beginning of our new appearance, along with modifying all the other negative stereotypes that have plagued us for years. Our focus to achieve these goals should remain simple. We need a more attractive activity to present to the world. By CALLERLAB's recommendation, it should take 2 years or better to achieve the plus level, not 25 weeks. This is ridiculous. We need to all agree right now that there's a problem. If we can't, then maybe we're just wasting our time discussing this issue. By a show of hands, I would like to see how many people here feel the same way as I do. Does anybody feel that there are too many calls trying to be taught in too short a time overall? How many would agree with that? Okay. By another show of hands, how many people feel that we as a whole have the courage that will be needed to move square dancing positively into the 21st century? I think there's hope. Now, we can't slow this thing down by not utilizing CALLERLAB's recommendations. This is a proven fact. We as a whole are not using the system properly, and I don't think we ever will. So what's left for us to do? We can continue on with the status quo and be assured square dancing will never thrive again. Or we can work together to bring our own CALLERLAB recommendations closer to reality. Don't forget, we are CALLERLAB. We are the ones that come up with these recommendations that we feel is in square dancing's best interest. We also are the ones that seem to have a hard time practicing what we preach. I want to read from the CALLERLAB mainstream program. The programs are not intended to segregate dancers into exclusive groups or to indicate that one who chooses to dance at his or her own preferred program is any better or any worse than any other dancer. Dancing skill can be achieved at many programs, and the quantity of calls is not necessarily an indication of dancer proficiency. It is hoped that the program list will be used to aid in a logical teaching progression and through coverage of basics in classes and to provide an enjoyable modern square dance for dancers of all inclinations. In addition, CALLERLAB's intent is that approved styling and timing of square dance movements will be an integral part of all classes and dance programs. It is also hoped that proper teaching, including timing and styling, will result in smooth dancing for the greater enjoyment of all. Responsible leaders within and outside of CALLERLAB recommend that dancers dance regularly at the program at which they graduate for at least 1 year, before they enter into classes or workshops for another program. This means that dancers graduating from mainstream programs should dance regularly at mainstream dances for a year before going on to the Plus program. There should be no pressure for movement from one program to another. Once a dancer has graduated, dancers should be encouraged to take their time, enjoy the fun and fellowship, and learn to dance well at that program before moving on to another program. Is there anybody in this room that feels that they've adhered to all of that? Not very many. Maybe I'm the only one who has trouble being in an organization that talks the talk but doesn't walk the walk. Too many of us talking the talk and not walking the walk. I've got a lot of pride, and I think you do too. And I'm really tired of being the laughing stock of the world. When I travel around this world, I'm embarrassed. Really embarrassed. Tells me we need to do something bad. My proposal calls for a phase out of the Plus calls over a certain amount of time. I don't know what all the answers are to this. It's just a proposal. But I feel if we phased out the Plus calls, if we took 5 calls a year for the next 6 years, they'll be gone. We'll have 1 level left. And as you take them off, move them to advanced. And then we have to have a strict criteria for advanced. No more of this milquetoast, wishy-washy advanced. Plain vanilla, soft, easy, all these terms that I hear. Could you do a soft A2 tip for us? An easy A2 tip. What does that mean? Just the advanced calls plain vanilla with no opposition on the basics or mainstream? That's what they mean. That's what we've done.
15 seconds. Jerry, you set? Okay. Good. 5 exactly. Okay. John, have a rebuttal?
Everything he said is ridiculous, and that's all I got to say about that. It's obvious that if we establish a 20-week program, some calls now on the mainstream list will have to be dropped. Which ones? Will our own personal ego let us arrive at a consensus as to which calls should be struck? I know callers who use such calls as spin chain through at every dance. I know callers who use fan the top at every dance. Are we going to deprive them of this luxury? Our activity is of worldwide proportions and has resultant implications on any changes we contemplate. What kind of leaders would we turn into if we adopt Mr. Story's idea? What will the rest of the world think of us?
John, using our present system, how would you propose that we solve this problem that we feel that we're in at this time?
The programs are not the problem. Callers are the problem. I firmly believe if we put as much effort into recruiting as should be done, we could get the dancers. Advertising in the local square dance publication is not the answer. I have seen callers many times run ads in our own local publication and wonder why they didn't get any outside people. Outside people don't read that thing. We callers have gotten lazy with regard to recruiting. Remember how we used to do demos in every shopping center, every parking lot, any place we thought we could gather a crowd, and we passed out cards and we passed out flyers and we got names and we got telephone numbers and we called them and we brought them into the program. The CALLERLAB programs are a reliable and well-constructed square dance sequence structure. They are time-tested and offer a stable base for the square dancing world. I have heard reports that 60 to 80% of our dancers in the United States consider themselves to be plus dancers. Presuming this is correct, are we now going to tell them that they must go back to learner's class for another year or more if they want to continue to dance the plus calls? Plus, they must now learn another 77 or more new calls, which would take them through what is now known as A2. How many do you think would quit? I predict more than 50%. The CALLERLAB programs should not be changed because they have achieved worldwide acceptance and recognition. They provide a standard against which all dancers can relate. They have been in existence for 20 years and provide a means by which dancers can determine in advance if the dance they are considering is appropriate for them to attend.
Jerry, want to discuss the other?
All that's easy to say. It's rhetoric. I've heard it 100 times. It's easy to say. Hard to do. If it was easy to do, we'd all be doing it. It's not easy to do. It takes work. Calling the plus calls is easy. With all these plus calls we have now and the new computer-generated choreography, we're losing the art of being a square dance caller. When we lose the art of being a true square dance caller and the true leadership that should go along with it, the activity is surely to follow. That's what we're losing here. We worry about recruiting dancers. I worry about recruiting callers. That's what we need. But how can we get a caller into this and expect him to learn 100 calls when we're advocating go all the way to plus, from beginning to plus? That's what the majority of this country is doing today. We can't go dropping mainstream calls either, Mr. Jones. We can't do that. We can't drop any mainstream calls. We can't get a clear picture of what calls to drop, even if we wanted to, because the plus calls are overshadowing them mainstream calls. Until you get rid of those, we don't know which calls on the mainstream list that if we didn't have them, we'd probably use them all. So how can we sit here today and say, well, I think we ought to drop spin chain through? I don't use it. Or we ought to drop this. Wrong. If we didn't have relay the Ducey and spin chain to gears, we'd use spin chain through, and we'd use 8 chain through. We would use these calls again. As far as the dancers dropping out, I don't believe that taking 5 calls away from them right now, if you went home and you didn't have 5 calls, that'd put us at 28. Should put us at 25, but I believe my addition is right. It'd put us at 28. I don't believe one of my dancers would realize that they were gone. Not unless y'all just went back home and incited a riot over this issue. And I feel like the following year, if you took 5 more calls, they wouldn't miss them either. It helps us get closer to where we're at. If you've got the bill here and we can't fit the bill, then we've got to make the bill fit us. We can't have it both ways. And there's callers that enjoy that luxury. They like it. It's kind of like turning on your blinker. That's a law. You're supposed to turn on your blinker when you turn. I guess callers think that they're exempt from that. They don't have to turn on their blinker. They don't want anybody to know which way they're turning, I guess. But we can't have it both ways. We need to decide on one way or the other, but we can't have it both.
All right, Joe, your next question up. How would you suggest we implement this plan?
Now, let me get to that part. The first thing has to be done is an ad hoc committee set in motion on this. More minds than mine need to be focused on this. And I'd like to see an ad hoc committee that took both sides of it. I'd like to see people on that committee that are as concerned about the basic level as I am. I think this can all go hand in hand. Whether we go with one level or not, basics is our big issue, and recruiting is. Doesn't do us any good to recruit, though, with a product like this. These numbers that I'm going to give you right now are astronomical. We have classes in the Rio Grande Valley, have for the last 5 or 6 years, massive numbers. I'm talking 4,000 dancers have went through our system down there. We're retaining less than 10% of them. I've got all the cards and letters from all these dancers that I've met over the last 5 years, writing me and letting me know why they're not dancing. They're mad at me. I took their money. I took 20 weeks of their life. I taught them to dance. They can dance to me, and they can dance to a few callers down there in the valley, and they dance a pretty good mainstream. Not excellent. We work towards it, but it's tough. You know it's tough. My case in point is there's no place for them to go dance. They come up north, there's no mainstream clubs. Very few. They have to drive, they have to go search. It's not easy getting into square dancing. I want to produce graduates of our system again, not survivors of our system. That's all we're doing now is producing survivors. If you can stand the test, you can be a square dancer. This is a perfect system in a perfect world. God knows we're not perfect. It is a perfect system, only in a perfect world. I think this ad hoc committee can do a lot of good, whether we go to one level or not. I think our focus should be on the basic level. That should be our entry level. Once we build that up, all these problems will take care of itself. But I don't know how much time we got left. I see square dancing dying in droves all over this country. We've got to shorten the list. We've got to bring things closer together to reality.
John, your comments?
Again, I say the programs and their format are not the problem. We callers are the problem in how we teach, or rather how we fail to teach. Callers need to be trained to be better teachers. Being a better teacher will not recruit more dancers. But how many dancers do we lose because they have been poorly taught? When CALLERLAB began, the main cry was for the standardization of the dance program. Notice I said program rather than programs. Thus the mainstream program, because that was what the majority of dancers were doing across the United States and Canada. Then we asked Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and all of Europe to join us in this worldwide endeavor, and it worked. Then we established other programs to satisfy those who wanted more. Now, for those who wanted a little more than mainstream, we established what is now known as the Plus program. Jerry's proposal would eliminate the Plus program entirely. Are we now going to tell those dancers and callers that we will no longer do relay the deucey and spin, chain, and exchange the gears? Forget it. What I fear is, you know what real fear is? It's when you're caught in a traffic jam and you realize you've just had 2 cups of coffee and a bran muffin. I fear a revolution from our dancers. It's like taxation without representation.
John, next question is to you. How would you encourage clubs and callers to better utilize the system we have now?
The continuous changing of our programs bears heavier on our dancers than we as callers. The dancers are caught in the middle. Since our original basic mainstream program was adopted in 1975, 7 calls have been added and 20 were dropped. The current Plus program was defined in 1982. Since then, 7 calls have been added and 1 dropped. Callers are selfish. We may not be able to offer good, interesting dance programming due to our inability to use what we have available to call interesting and danceable dances. Just because callers and dancers have abused the established system and want CALLERLAB or others to bail them out, the lists themselves are practical and have served us well over the years. The existing programs have posed no problems to the square dance activity in many of our overseas countries. A specific country is Germany. Most clubs are registered with the local Dancers Association as Basic, Mainstream, Plus, A1, and A2. If an existing program were eliminated, it would be met with adverse reaction by these clubs and ultimately tarnish CALLERLAB's reputation. The programs will work if you work the programs. Provide variety from within rather than from outside.
Jerry, your comments?
Once again, it's the same old rhetoric. Sure it'll work. I know it'll work. No darn good and well it'll work. Why hasn't it worked? You tell me. I don't believe it's going to work. I don't believe it's going to work any better right now than it will 10 years from now. It takes a lot of self-discipline. I don't know if we all have it. I don't know if I got it. I find it really hard to run this system the way it is. It's difficult. Something has to give here. The dancers are caught in the middle. I really feel bad about that. I don't see a revolution, though, because I think they do get a little bit selfish when they get up into the upper levels, when they get to plus. But I think they'll come back. I think they're going to realize that they have a lot more at stake here than keeping the status quo than meets the eye, too. These same people that you're talking about losing, we've already lost a lot of them. Clubs have folded up. They're gone. They're out of here. We could have had 4,000 dancers in the activity right now, down in the valley, if we'd had places to accommodate them. It's the callers, I guarantee you, it's the callers that won't make this system work. But if it's not going to work, then why do we keep doing it? Why do we keep whipping a dead horse? I guess I'll never feel right coming to CALLERLAB and running for the Board of Governors. Because I could not do that. If I was going to be, I feel bad enough not trying hard enough right now. It makes me feel weak. And I hate to feel weak, but I do. But if I was on the Board of Governors, I would surely make a better attempt than I see our E-Board and our Board of Governors. I don't see any of them really walking the walk here. It's got to start from the top down. Leadership, folks. Where is it at? I don't see it happening. I see every one of them going out and teaching advanced and plus to dancers with zero training in what's our new term, extended applications to calls. Now, leadership has to start at the top. Somebody has to lead by example. Well, with no example, where are we going? I don't see a lot of leadership at the top in that respect. And I have a lot of admiration for every one of them. But I'm not sure I want to be involved in an organization that's hypocritical.
Jerry, next question is to you then. Then how, with your proposal, what effect will that have on our current dancers and clubs? How do we make that work?
Well, number one, we're finally going to be dancing together in one hall. We're going to teach dancers how to dance, and they're going to be able to go to the National Convention and dance for the first time in how many years? In the main hall, not stock off over in some dirty corner with 4 other squares that just got out of class. We're going to provide a product for them for the first time. You think people want to take 20 weeks of lessons, 25 weeks of lessons, whatever, to go to the National Convention or any other major festival in this country and be treated like a second-class citizen? That's what we're going to give back to them. We're going to put us all back dancing together. I think that's a great start. We won't lose our salespeople either. The minute a dancer goes to plus, they're gone. They don't want to come back and help us get new beginners, new students. That's where they become selfish. They're gone. We lost them. Boom, right there. Now, if we could keep them for a year, 2 years at that level, those are the people that are going to go out and get us more dancers. But with this rush to plus, they don't want to come back and dance with them. They're gone. They're out of here. It'd certainly make our transition from class to club much more easy. This also promotes better calling, better teaching. Right now, you don't have to be a real good caller or a real good teacher to go out and make $100 calling a plus dance. Once again, we're losing the true art of being a square dance caller. And I think that's more important right now than all the other things that we're talking about. We need to have these kind of issues come up in these meetings. More callers. You can talk about the levels and restructuring them and doing everything you want, but without callers, we have no dancers. It's going to give us a better appearance. Guarantee you, it'll give us a better appearance. Those 4,000 dancers that we run off in the Rio Grande Valley, can you imagine if each one of them talked to half a dozen people and told them, hey, you don't want nothing to do with this square dance stuff? It's silly. Take you in there and you take 20 lessons and yeah, you're having fun and everything, but you want to go out and dance with your friends that was telling you about it. And it's kind of like Cal Campbell's You Mulata, Hot a Lotta, Think a Lotta article. Good article. Hit the nail on the head, Jack. There it is. But we just keep taking the ostrich approach. Stick your head in the sand and hope this problem goes away. Folks, it's not going away. If we all have it in our hearts, we could change it. And I think maybe most of us sitting here have it in our hearts because we're the ones that's here. How about the 5,000 callers that ain't here? They don't care. I think it really improves our product. We're going to once again turn out graduates of this system, not survivors of this system. And that's all we do now. That's all we're going to continue to do. And dancers must have a place to dance when they graduate. Without that, we have nothing. It all goes hand in hand. I guess if we were really thriving and we had thousands of dancers coming into this activity, we wouldn't even be bogged down with these level problems. But I'm not sure square dancing is ever going to shoot to the moon again. So we have to be willing to deal with square dancing on a lesser basis. Not as many people are going to be partaking in this activity. Not right now. We've had too much adversity. So we have to have a product that's going to be attractive when these people do graduate. More accommodation at the beginning level.
John, your comments?
We have programs that are attractive to our dancers. We've got the programs already in place. We've been using them for 20 years. They've proven themselves. They work. We're going to go to the national convention. Everybody going to get in one hall and dance? That ain't going to work. We ain't going to have that. We're going to have different halls for different people to dance the different programs that they want to dance that have already been established for them to go to. And that's where they're going to want to go. And we're going to tell the plus dancers now, forget you, stay at home. We don't want you at the national convention anymore because there ain't no place for you to dance. I don't think that's going to work. We're talking about 80% of our dancers across the United States alone that are in the plus program and dancing the plus program. We're going to drop 80% of the people from the national convention or any other convention that we have if we adopt this program. They simply won't come because there's no place for them to dance. They're not going to go back and be a lowly mainstream dancer. No way. They're going to keep hunting for something else that other callers are providing for them to go across the street and get it. If you don't do it over here, I'll go over there. There's somebody over there that'll give me exactly what I want. If he won't do it, I'll go across the street. I'll find somebody else. So we got it. We've already got it here. What do we want to change it? What do we want to mess it around for? All we got to do is work it.
I guess we go back to John. Next question to John. John, what effect would changes in our present system to improve our present system? What changes would that have, and how would they affect our existing dancers?
A dancer commented that he believes that the CALLERLAB programs should not be changed. They seem to be working. To add to or subtract from these programs would be confusing. This dancer does not want to dance any more than the plus program. But he wants to dance the plus program because he has fun doing that. This dancer further stated that changing the programs could possibly lead to the loss of more dancers, which we surely do not need. Some of us do not know when to leave well enough alone. Egos need to be set aside. Personal egos may be our biggest problem. The programs work as they exist today. In summation, and on behalf of CALLERLAB, I urge you to reject this new proposal and leave the programs as they are.
Jerry, your comments?
John, you missed the point. John's trying to scare you when he says, we're going to go to the national convention and take our plus dancers up there and not have a plus hall? That's not what I said. I said we're going to have a phase out of these plus calls. The dancers aren't even going to know they're gone. And in 6 years, we're at our goal. Take 10 years. I don't care, as long as I see a positive direction here. But to sit here and scare these people, it's not scary. They're taking calls off lists and shuffling them around all the time. How did 33 calls get on the plus list to begin with? That's scary. That's scary. That's going the wrong way. We all know. We just took a hand vote here, and all of us said there's too many calls being taught in too short a time. That ain't going to change. We need to restructure this thing. How, I don't know. But the minimum that I think we should settle for at this convention is at least a committee to investigate this further. I don't believe we should walk out of this and reject this totally. That's ridiculous. That's going backwards, not forwards. Thank you.
I think now's a good time to have some comments. Once again, the comments will be limited to 4 minutes, so Gail, if you want to time those comments just so we don't go any longer than 4 minutes. And let me take this microphone out, and 1, 2, and 3, okay? Your name and...
My name is Dan Goft. I'm from New Jersey. I think both of you have made some very good points, both pro and con. I think that there is, though, problems with the way things are being done. Maybe not so much with the way the lists are structured, but with the way they're being used. I also don't think taking away might be the right way to go, but adding to. Listen, bear with me for a little bit. Phase in over a few years, adding to the plus programming, making it completely impossible to do in a year. So that then the clubs that are now plus can either keep up gradually, moving up to the new plus, which would be like 50 or 60, make it 60 calls. All right? And those who don't wish to keep up with that, move to a mainstream, where the callers would have to be more interesting and more entertaining. Where would they do any of the other proposals? I think there is a problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, comments over here? In the back, we've got one.
Keith Ferguson, California. I'm glad people are looking at the problem. I don't know that I really agree with either of you gentlemen, which is probably good. My concern, I think, is that I don't think the programs are the major problem in why we're losing dancers. They may be one contributing factor. And I think it may be more important we put our energies into asking why are we not losing dancers, why aren't we recruiting new dancers? Where I work, I talk about square dancing all the time, and the comment I hear a lot is, I don't want to wear those silly clothes. Well, maybe we ought to look at that issue. I don't think the clothes are silly, but maybe we ought to look at, is this keeping people out? I look at what my friends, which are engineers, are doing after work. They're going out, they're playing tennis, they're playing racquetball, volleyball, competitive sports. What do we keep saying? Square dancing is, to quote the CALLERLAB Foundation tape, good, clean fun. I have never heard anybody I work with say, where can I find some good, clean fun? Emphasis is directly from the tapes. Now, what about the programs? I raised my hand when you said, are they too long? Yes, I think they are. In our area, there is no mainstream. I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's fact. We teach plus in 8 to 9 months. I think it's hard to do, but I don't think it's really keeping a lot of people out. If we really think we want to reduce the size of the program, it can be done. We could eliminate some of the plus calls and some of the mainstream calls. Furthermore, and this will get a lot of dirty looks from some of you I know, but I think we're not looking at what our dancers want. I heard a caller say, my dancers can do a zoom from columns. Can yours? Your dancers can do a teacup chain, but can they zoom from columns? Probably not. But what do the dancers want? Do the dancers care if they can zoom from columns? Do they care if they can have ends cross run from 1 million formations? Well, 6 arrangements. Do they care? But I do see the look of real satisfaction when they master doing a teacup chain the first time, and after that you don't call it. 90% of what I call is mainstream at a plus club, but they like those plus club calls to relax. Do we really need to teach moves from every conceivable arrangement and formation? Maybe we should look at the standard applications handbook that we put out and say, let's limit it to that. I think my time's up.
Good. Back to Vaughn, then to John, and then to Doug. Okay? We've got...
Vaughn, is it on? Vaughn Parrish from Colorado. I think everybody recognizes we got problems, but I don't agree with your solution. The status quo is not working. And piling another 35 or whatever the basics is in the plus program onto 70-something in the advanced program and saying, keep hands off for a couple of years, that's not going to work either. Callers and dancers are going to reach out and choose what they want to teach and what they want to learn. And I would say a solution would come nearer being, get the carrot back to where the people can reach it. Once they got the carrot and they like it, let them live with it. If we would say 50 and 75 and 100 basics spread over 2 or 3 years, once people can dance 100 basics, and we all know clubs that can dance about that many, and they're called plus clubs, and the callers call about 100 basics, and they're called plus callers. If we would call those people advanced, see how many advanced clubs and advanced callers we'd have, and the carrot would be taken back. They'd enjoy it. Then the stuff is now on advanced, 70-something basics. Start that as challenge. That's the reason people are going for it. They're not doing to be better dancers. They're going for a little more challenge. They want the challenge in their mind, not in their body. That's when they begin to touch hands for a star through, touch hands for an Alaman left. Don't promenade, don't swing. That's not advanced dancing. That's a little challenge. So why not name it what they're going for it for? Name it challenge. If we take the first 65 basics, name that square dancing. Take the next, what is now plus, name that advanced. You'd have about 100 basics. And everything is now in the A list. Name that challenge. Let challenge take care of itself from there on. I don't think we'd have any problem. Look how many advanced club and advanced callers we'd have if we do that. And the people who are in mainstream are not going to plus so they can be called plus. The man on the street doesn't know what plus means. He knows what advanced means. We just need to quit fooling ourselves and thinking that you can restrict people from reaching out and getting the callers from reaching out and getting the basics they want to teach. Once we had them listed into about 3 different groups, then we could start looking at which of those basics are really basics and which are fun figures to do.
Thank you, Bob. Then John, then Doug, and then Sopen.
Hi, John Marshall from Herndon, Virginia. I would offer something to you. We've talked about a whole bunch of different little items, and I think Jerry is right in terms of our needing to have a committee to evaluate some of the things that are going on. I feel like we're looking for the magic bullet, the magic fix. We've all decided it's the program, it's the length of lessons, it's the number of calls, and I don't think that's it. And maybe part of it, it's a small part of it. We've had so many changes in our society over the last 20 years, perhaps even the last 12 to 15 years. Technology changes, the quality of the entertainment world in general, outside of the square dance world. And let's face it, we're sharing the recreational time of everybody that we want to introduce into this activity. Their expectations are growing, they're changing, and we're not changing. Or at least we're not changing in the right directions. I think we need to look at a couple of things. John Jones touched on something that I think is critical. Personal caller integrity. I don't care how many lists you have. I don't care how many calls are on the list. If we don't honor what we've said we're going to do, and all of us actually do it, it doesn't matter. The number of calls, number of programs, doesn't matter. You know, and it's a hard walk. I agree with that. But that's another aspect. We have no teeth to enforce that, and I'm not sure how to create them. But I think we're trying to focus on just one thing to fix it. That's not going to happen. And too many changes are taking place. We've heard about, what about costuming changes? Society all around us is changing, and I'm in favor of having some level of our history, our roots to the activity. That's what made it great for all of us. But we need to look at what's happening in the world around us, and I don't know that we are, and there's not going to be a magic fix just by calls and programs. Jerry wants to start something happening. He wants to see a change. He wants to see an improvement. Everybody in this room wants it. None of us are sure how to do it. I think there's callers out there that are very mad at CALLERLAB, and some dancers. But I think they're mad because we didn't fix it. Well, you know what? It's not we. It's every one of us. It's us. CALLERLAB's just a tool. That's all we are, is a tool to try to make things happen, and yet we're not getting the honesty from our own callers from within. We've got to step in. We've got to find changes. I don't care how long we debate the calls or which calls. It is not working. I mean, I love the program. I've been one of the ones who have said, look at Europe, look at Scandinavia. It worked. They had nothing to go on with what we sent them. They did it. It worked. Different culture, different time, and it's even changing there now, as I understand it, from the reports I'm getting back. But it's time to look at more than just this singular focus. I think we're kidding ourselves. If we do this, make all these changes, we're going to find ourselves in the same place. Thank you.
Good. Doug, and then I'd like to ask a question also. Doug?
I'm Doug Bennett from Dallas, Texas, and I'd like to commend Jerry and John both on a lot of good points that was brought up today. What I would like to ask everyone, and even myself and Jerry, why do we have this rush to plus? You know, why? It's because you go to a dance that's advertised as a mainstream dance, with every other tip plus, every third tip plus. The mainstream dancers don't know about plus until they see it there, okay? And John and Jerry, you do festivals. You know, we have a lot of people here who just have their local home programs with a little bit of calling. And my dancers go to dance to Jerry's Story at the Texas Stampede, and they hear Relay the Doocy and Spin Chain the Gears, and they come back to me and said, we want to relay the Doocy and Spin Chain the Gears. That's where they get it, okay? We're all guilty. If we want to know what's wrong with it, we don't have to look any further than this room right here, okay? It's us. When we start when we stop providing the leadership and allow the clubs to tell us what the program is and how we're going to call it and how we're going to run it, instead of hiring us to do a mainstream dance or a plus dance. It doesn't matter what the level is, but the level should be adhered to. That's, in my opinion, the main reason that we have the rush to plus. Take an average dance in Dallas, okay? They'll have either two plus tips or every other tip plus, and they have rounds in between. He's been there an hour and a half, and he's got to dance one tip. And he sees his friends out there dancing. They're doing plus, I want to do plus. Okay, well, come on, take my plus lessons. I think we ought to look at that, guys. Thank you.
Very good, Doug. I'd like to offer you guys a comment if you'd like. I'd like to make one other comment. I think there's an awful lot of people here in this room, and raise your hands if you are in that situation, are in a situation where you don't necessarily have control of how the limit of your class. In other words, you need to take your class to that particular program. How many of you have the luxury of taking your dancers to only the basic program? 49 basics, you can stop there. They can dance any place around. How many of you? Just the basics. We've got down Mesa. We've got overseas. Whereabouts? Mesa. So limited areas can take only to the basic program. How many of you can have the luxury and have good mainstream dance in your area, can take your dancers to mainstream, and that's it? Okay, our study, at least the poll that we took, showed that about 48% of our members can probably take their dancers to the basic program, to the mainstream program. Now, plus, how many of you really don't have mainstream in your area? You can't stop at the mainstream. You've got to take your dancers all the way through the plus program. How many of you are kind of almost forced in that situation? How many of you have just quit your classes, just say, I'm not going to teach them all the way to the plus program? How many of you have tried to do that? Excellent. But somebody else picks up the program and does the same thing, right? That's our big problem, is that there is a dancer push to plus. Now, how do we handle that? We can take the leadership problem. We can take it all we want, but you can take it only so far when the guy down the street picks it up, and then he tries to teach them all the way to plus, and he doesn't have half the experience that you have. You know, and you're worried about that. So how do we address that side of the issue?
The situation being that you go through the mainstream program and you release your dancers out and they go out and dance, as Doug said, and then they hear a plus tip and say, where do I go to learn that? Well, I don't do that. I'm hard-headed. I don't teach it. They get the local magazine. And Doug Bennett's starting a plus class next week, so he gets 20 squares. He's making a lot of money. He getting all my dancers. Made me mad. So what I do next time, I teach a plus class so they don't go to dance to him. They're going to stay and dance with me. That's what's happening.
But you think the system works? You know, it's all I've got. Working that way for 40 years. But it's not. Yeah, it's not working. That's how it's been working. But it's not working. You understand that?
All right. Comment 1, 2, 3, then 4.
Yes, I'm Bill Barner from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I first attended my first CALLERLAB conference in 1975. I've been inactive for 11 years. This is my first time back in 11 years. And one thing I have learned since I've been here, I have missed a lot. I've really missed a lot by not being with you. Job commitments prevented me from coming to conventions. I don't think it's the fault of the dancer. I think it's the fault of the callers. And as Jerry said, there's 4,500 of them out there that are not here. If there's 5,000 callers and we have 500 here, the other 4,500 are out there somewhere. My main concern about this thing is that it boils down to, John mentioned ego, but I put it a little more basic than that. I put it as greed of the callers. I think we have to focus
on something other than the issues that we've been focusing on, and that's the greed of the callers and wanting to get the other guys dancers. I don't particularly think I own my dancers. I never tell them I own them. You can't go dance here. You can't go there. You're my dancers. You can't do this or do that. I try to tell them when I graduate them that, okay, we've gone through this program. You can go dance anywhere you want. I'd love to have you in my club, and we want you in our club, but you're free to go anywhere you want. I've not lost a dancer like that yet. Not one. I don't have a big club. I don't make a lot of money. I think I'm a damn good teacher. I have a degree in mathematics, and there's no science in mathematics at all. It's only logic, and every caller out here has logic in their brain, or otherwise they wouldn't be a caller. So you have to use it. You have to use that logic and focus your attention to what the real goal is. All right, Larry?
I'm Larry Hoskins from Omaha, Nebraska, and I wholeheartedly agree that, number one, with John, that the programs are not the problem, okay? And I agree with, I have to agree with Jerry. I know who the problem is, but I don't know what the hell the answer to it is either, Jerry, okay? Because you can't get them to do it, all right? So the problem is the callers. We're not living by it, and we're not going by the thing. But the only question I had was that, number one, I did a session for I'm the state callers rep to the Dancers Association in Nebraska, and I did a program here a while back on the legacy survey that was done, and we, here again, okay? I haven't heard a thing mentioned about the dancers here. I haven't heard anything mentioned about what the dancers want. Nobody has mentioned that survey that Legacy put in a lot of work to do it with, and I can tell you this much, in all of those surveys that the Legacy come out with, and California was one of them that just astounded me when they came out with the results they did, that 70 to 75% of the dancers said they wanted to leave it the way it was. What the hell are we doing?
Larry, in that regard, with the Legacy survey, it came out somewhere in the neighborhood of 54 to 60% of the clubs that were dancing plus. No, that's I don't know whether they're lying or not. That's what the survey said.
I don't believe too much in surveys because it depends on the questions. You can get any answer you want from a survey. Surveys don't mean much.
Art Anthony from Rhode Island. For the first time in many years, our Callers Association, we've run dances for 45 years. We finally went back to one hall. We didn't even put a level on it. And I can tell you, if you talk to my good friend Dick Ledger, we had the best time we ever had this year. And we didn't have any problems. And I told the callers, you got a brain, use it. We've got some relatively new people. We've got some seasoned dancers. We're going to have a good time. The system as I see it now, on paper looks good. But we've got to change something. Even if we do it wrong, we can't sit where we are. We've got to change. We've got to try. Jerry, you've offered something to start with. I think we should get that committee together and go with it.
Yes. Back over here, and then to John.
Gene Spence, Greenville, South Carolina. You say the current system is working. I say the current system is not working. I say the current system is failing. It's been failing for the last 10 or 15 years. And it has segmented our dancers rather than unifying our dancers, and it's going to continue unless we make a change. Whether it's the dancer's fault or whether it's the caller's fault, I don't think it makes much difference. We've got to change something, because if we don't, it's going to continue at the same rate that it's continuing now, and I say it's going downhill. Some people say it's going to bottom out. But we can't attract new dancers, at least in our area and a bunch of areas that I've talked to, at the rate that we need to replenish the people that we're losing. As I understand it, the average dancer in the activity is 4 to 5 years. Is that approximately correct?
Or less.
Or less. What does that mean? In 4 to 5 years, at least half the dancers that we now have are not going to be in the activity. So why are we so worried about them? We seem to have all our commitment to the dancers that are in the activity right now rather than the new dancers that we want to bring into the activity. So I think we need to concentrate on what we need to do to bring more dancers into the activity and keep them in the activity longer, because the way that we're set up right now, we can't bring new dancers into the activity and they only stay in it for 4 or 5 years. Do we want to continue with that? Thank you.
John, and then Greg.
I had asked Mike to let me wait until the end of this session to give my own personal viewpoints. But he and I think that maybe this might be an appropriate time to do that. In that the position that I took in the debate atmosphere was for CALLERLAB. And I am a CALLERLAB member. I am a CALLERLAB member 365 days a year, not just 3 or 4 here at this convention. I believe in this organization. And I believe that we will find the answer that we're looking for if we keep looking and working for it. In the beginning of CALLERLAB, I firmly believed in our mainstream program and would get very upset if I heard someone complain about it. I was convinced it was the only way to go. Then we adopted the Plus program, and I had a group of 45 squares dancing the Plus program with 2 rules. They had to continue to belong to a mainstream club, and I would never go beyond the Plus program. This group danced with me for over 8 years. I thought I was on a roll. Then I dropped out of calling for a few months because I was not having fun. When I came back, there was a big push to A1 and A2. So I did some on my own, and I got pushed by some groups to do advanced. This didn't last long because I was not having fun, and I therefore refused to call any more advanced. I should clarify that with the fact that not long ago I was doing a festival, and I found out I was supposed to do an A1 session, and I thought maybe they had hired another caller to do that. But I found out I was supposed to, and I don't do that. But I did get the list and look at it, and I found out that I still remembered about 15 calls that were on the list. But I did 4 hours for advanced dancers, and I called 3 advanced calls. That's all I used off the entire program. I used what I knew to use and how to use. I would tell contacts that they should hire somebody else if they wanted anything beyond Plus. You know, my calendar is just as full as it ever was. It's as full as I want it to be. I got a lot of friends in this room. I got a lot of friends in CALLERLAB. And you may get unhappy about what I'm about to say. But my own personal feeling is that we should adopt a program that can be taught in no more than 20 weeks and eliminate everything else. And I know those are strong words, but I still believe in CALLERLAB. I'll do what CALLERLAB says. 3 years ago, I reviewed the proposal of the ACA, and I told the Secretary of the American Callers Association that if he and the President and the Vice President would stand up and swear that they would never, ever call anything else beyond what was on their list, that I would join them immediately and support them 100%. I don't think they've done that. The ACA secretary called me when he heard about this debate, right after he heard about it. In fact, he heard about it right after I did. And he called me and we talked for about an hour on the telephone. And he finally told me that their program wasn't working either. I knew that it wasn't before he told me that. Jerry, remember several years ago I told you and Tony Oxendine and Larry Letson when y'all jumped me in the hallway at a CALLERLAB meeting because the group in some room wouldn't do what y'all wanted them to, that if you 3 did not get your act together and promote for the betterment of square dancing, you would watch it die in front of your eyes. And I'm glad to see that you are now working in that direction. An overseas caller made a statement to me about a month ago that when he first learned to dance 15 years ago, all dancers We're in one big hall having a great time. Now they are divided into 4 more rooms, and they get together at the after party. And then some of the plus and advanced dancers and callers make comments to the basic and mainstream dancers that they need to learn more so they can move up. Boy, this is wrong. They ain't moving up, in my opinion. Jerry, your proposal will never work until you and some of our other prominent caller leaders stand up and say, I will never, ever call anything other than what's on the mainstream or square dancing program, whatever it might be called. I am ready and willing to do that. Are you?
Comments are Greg and Larry and Shane, and then back on the far corner.
I applaud both these gentlemen for the presentation today, and I heartily think that a one program that can be taught in X number of weeks, whether it's 20 or whatever, is probably the direction for our salvation that we're going to have to go to in the future. Do you realize, however, that when we seriously start talking about something like that, we must put our egos aside? I dearly love the call Spin Chain Through. I do more one-nighters and mainstream dances than I do plus dances. Because I don't do that many plus dances, Spin Chain Through to me choreographically is wonderful, because I don't have spin chain and exchange the gears and spin chain the gears. I dearly love Spin Chain Through. I must put aside my ego when we get to the point that John's talking about and be willing to keep my mouth quiet and allow the judgment of a committee of experts or whatever to be able to make a decision that maybe Spin Chain Through has to go by the wayside. Every single one of us in this room, the other 4,500 callers who are not here in the future, who really have the love of our activity at heart and not our pocketbook and not our ego, must be willing to make that same commitment to let their ego be out of the way and let some of their favorite pieces of choreography go by the wayside for the good of our activity.
Larry?
Larry Cole, Chairman of the Basic Mainstream Committee. I pretty well had my head straight what I wanted to say until John came back just a little bit ago, and he didn't really leave a whole lot of room for me to go anymore. But we have to do something. We really have to do something. From being chairman of the Basic Mainstream Committee for a few years and going through a couple biannual reviews, not picking on anybody, but everybody wants to make some changes to the Basic Mainstream list. Most of the underlying current I get is for removal. That's good. Everybody sends in what they want to remove. We pare that down. I come back with 5, 6, 8, 10, whatever number you want to pick that hit the top of that list. Now we're ready to roll, and we're ready to make some changes, and we're ready to make the teach time better and make it more obtainable, except, oops, those 10 calls just became everybody's favorite call, and by damn, you can't take them off. So we wasted all of that time. I think this would be a great way for me to lose my job if we could come up with something that everybody could dance in one hall and have a good time. We need to do something. Instead, we keep making it easier to climb this ladder that shouldn't be here. A few years ago, the advanced program was divided into 2 teach groups, simply to make it better to teach, I suppose. I'm not quite sure what the logic was. It was divided into an A1, A2, just for teaching purposes, which immediately made 2 programs. Now the plus dancer could go to advanced by only having to learn half of those advanced calls because we just gave him an A1 to learn and then an A2 to learn. We continually pull quarterlies from the other programs and tantalize these people that are down here, give them 2 or 3 quarterlies a year from some upper program, and all of a sudden they think, I've learned half of that upper program, I just well try to run out and learn the rest of it. We got to quit doing that. We got to quit tantalizing them with those calls that when we sit down and say, well, we really don't want them to go dance up there. We need to all dance in one place, and we need to be able to recruit that way, and we need to get more people. If by tomorrow morning we could multiply the number of dancers we have by 5, just instantaneously, this meeting would not have so much importance. If by tomorrow morning we could multiply the dancers we have now by 10, this meeting shouldn't even have taken place. We haven't found that answer yet. Recruitment is still a big, big problem. But it goes hand in hand with what we're running now and what we're working now. And I support looking at something and doing something and making some decisions and trying to get something done so that we can all go home and still have somebody to call to. And I appreciate the effort that both of these guys put in and the work and their dedication.
Thank you. Shane?
Shane Greer from Oklahoma, and I'm just exactly like Larry. I had exactly everything I was going to say, and John took the wind right out of my sails when he said what he said. But anyway, I heard a lot of talk about some of the surveys and things that we're doing, and anybody that doesn't think we have a problem, I think is wrong. We do have a problem. That's obvious. The surveys, though, I think we're surveying the wrong people. People that are square dancing already, whether they're dancing mainstream or plus, they like the activity. They like it. We need to be surveying these people that are quitting and surveying the people that are out there on the street that don't square dance. Those are the people that are going to tell you why they don't want to do it. That's the only thing that I have to say.
There was a comment down here. There's one here, and then Randy, okay?
George Moore, Montana. Let's go back to square one, to why CALLERLAB was started. We used to have Vaughn Parrish and John and DeClaire come through. Each time they came through, each one of them had to have something new to give us. We wanted them to, well, it's been Chain to Gear, or Teacup Chain was one of them that was coming out. This has been 35 years ago. And this is why CALLERLAB was instigated in the first place, to stop this dilemma that was hitting us as square dancers. And so they would come, they would do something. The next caller that came, we'd say, why don't you do what Vaughn did when he came in? CALLERLAB got together and they established a list. Well, they turned into rather than a guideline for the callers, as a status symbol for the dancers. This is where we're at, is we've let these lists become a status symbol for the dancers, rather than guidelines for the callers. And we as callers have let them get away from us. Now, I call for a small A1 group. Anytime we have a mainstream dance, every one of them are there, or I will not be at the A1 group. They know that. And we danced this weekend, we would have, but they said, no, you're not here, George, we won't do it. We have another A1 group, but they also do that. They're everyone with the mainstream dance. Dee Dee will be in next week. She'll call a plus dance, and I can tell her how many squares will be at the plus dance. About a fourth of what will be at her mainstream dance. We still have the mainstream dancing where they're having their fun, but we also have the program where they can go and get their little bit of challenge. And so I would say that the problem's there, but if we try to do it this way, establish one list, or right back to the thing we were 30 years ago, when every caller that came in did his little thing, and the dancers say, why can't my caller do that on a local basis? If I don't have these guidelines to go by, I'm in trouble. And I appreciate the guidelines that CALLERLAB has put out.
All right, thank you, George. Randy, and then Kathy.
Randy Doherty. John, I think the comment or question that you asked Jerry was, would he be willing to quit calling other programs with your 20-week program? I think that was a very unfair question. I saw Jerry hesitate and shook his head. For me, that works in the MESA program, 90% for 6 months is income from other programs. For the last 2 years, I haven't taught plus or A1. I've been doing a lot of advance and challenge. That's by my choice. When I go on the road for 6 months of the year, I call nothing but mainstream or plus. And my point is to lose a mind, choreographically wise, that Jerry has, for him never to call advance or put plus together the way he does, or challenge, would be an injustice to our program. We've always had advance and challenge ever since I could walk and learn to dance. Nobody knew about them. They were in their basements and that kind of thing, and I suggest that's what's going to happen if we adopt what you have. You can't make advance and challenge go away. You can't make a caller quit calling a program. We've always had it. And my whole point is that I don't know financially if I could give up calling advance and challenge with the income that I have, making from what we really now have as mainstream and plus. Very tough.
Kathy?
It's time to hear a female voice, and since I've never called anything more than basic for Girl Scouts, I think I'm classed as a dancer rather than a caller. From a dancer's point of view, I want to say that just shortly before CALLERLAB was started in 1973, I almost quit dancing. I could not go to the average dance and dance. It depended. George talked about the caller who might do his thing, but the trouble was that every caller had a different thing, and you never knew what you were going to get. And if you flubbed on the floor, you were frowned on. And so I felt very uncomfortable, and I really seriously thought about just quitting dancing. Think of the 25 years I would have missed. But I want to say that the thought of all of us together on the floor, all dancing together, is a myth unless you do have a program that every caller will subscribe to. And I don't care how many figures are in it or whether you're going to have programs up above it or not, but the key thing, if you're going to have 20 calls or 30 calls, you stick to the 20 calls or 30 calls. I know now that if I go to Germany or Italy or Australia or Japan, I can dance. I know what I'm going to find on the dance floor. That has been a boon to dancers in the United States and all over the world. I know we've got problems. I know we need to do something. I do think we need to study. But let's not think of all of us dancing on the floor together as one big happy family as the way it was 20, 25 years ago. Because it's a lie, folks. It wasn't so great.
Dee Dee, and then down in the front, and then Martin.
Dee Dee Doherty from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I think we all know the point is we need to do something, and I think we need to work together. I think we need more topics and more issues just like we have today. Why are we in this room? We should have had a whole great big meeting of everybody who's attending here in this type of topic. We need to all get together. We all need to know what's really going on. Maybe some people in certain areas don't see that there's a problem. I don't know how they can miss it, but maybe they don't have a problem. Shane, what he's been doing is working great in getting all these new people out. That's working fine for him. Maybe he doesn't want to change anything, but as we all get together and work together instead of backstabbing our neighboring callers or calling your own little program so that they can't go across the street to dance to somebody else. We need to work together. We're here's CALLERLAB. We are CALLERLAB. We should be all together and working out the problem.
Very good. Down here we had... Yes. Yes. Yes, Lois.
Thank you. I'm Lois Baldwin, Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm a guest, but I would like to speak to you as a dancer. When we graduated from class and went through the class, we went to the state festival, mainstream. But the caller called some plus and put that in, and we could not dance. We broke down. We were embarrassed. We went home. Then we sat down and discussed this and ended up saying we're going to do one of two things. Either we're going to be dancing just within our club, or we're going to have to go on and learn the plus calls. And because we are goers and we like people, we decided that that's what we would do. As we went along, I said to Glenn, being an educator, they have the wrong label on this program, mainstream. You know, the parents that I deal with, they don't want to be labeled as mainstream. Their children are not mainstream. They're talented. They're gifted. They're above average. They're A+. Anything but mainstream. And the dancers that we and friends that we were dancing with, they always wanted to reach so that they were not the mainstreamers. They didn't want to be the people on the bottom. That's the way they saw it. And I said, you know, if the term was just different, this mindset that we have is pushing them onward and upward. So I would like to see whatever CALLERLAB does, get a name on there other than mainstream, something that is satisfying to people. The other thing that I saw was callers, you're not under control in terms of what your commitment is. You yield to pressure. I would like to have you not call to any dance, festival, or special dance that had it labeled mainstream and plus tips. You say, I don't call that dance, either mainstream or plus. Give the people who dance plus, they don't care if they dance mainstream. They want to have a good time. One of the very best dances that I've ever danced to was last year here at CALLERLAB when our Swedish callers called and we had mainstream. I was absolutely ecstatic. And we ought to have dances like that every single night that we as club members go to a dance, whether it's in Salt Lake City or Helena, Montana or Yuma, Arizona or Florida. I don't care where it is. The other thing is that I said, you know, after we finished the plus, this is not good education. You do not have mainstream or plus clubs, so to speak, start mainstream classes and then end up into a plus club. You ought to have mainstream clubs that had mainstream classes. Let them dance there. Let them have a great time. And then the mainstream clubs have the mainstream classes. That's the problem is the callers. And you've got to be in control. If we as teachers capitulated like that, we would have teachers in junior high reaching down and having first and second grade classes and let them skip third and go on to sixth because they were so good and have them into junior high. Woo! What kind of responsible education is that, I ask you? I'm really concerned about those things as a dancer. My hat's off to you. I think you ought to have a study committee, and let's get moving on this because we've got a lot to do. And I say thank you for inviting us. We've learned a lot, and we know that you're working hard. Thank you.
Martin, then Nasser, and then we're going to wrap it up.
First of all, John made a reference as to an area where he is asked to call A1. That's my hometown. That's where he was. We have mainstream. We have advanced. We have plus. We also have basic. We have a little bit of CDP. But I keep hearing everybody blaming callers, blaming dancers. And one thing we really have overlooked in all of this, what is the nature of the human animal? What do you want out of life? Where are you heading as an individual? You always progress. You get a job, you look at the guy that has the job up above you, you say, someday I'm going to be there. I spent 44 years working in one area, in one lab, shall we say. In that lab, there were probably 200 jobs that were available. Out of those 200, I bet you I held 19 of them while I was there. I wound up as supervisor of that place. I didn't start out as supervisor. We all have that innate desire to achieve. Whether it be in playing bridge, playing chess, as a gardener, whatever. We have the desire to own a better car than our neighbor. We want to dress better. Look at the women you see walking down the street. They all want to look better than the woman that meets them on the street. And we as men, we have that desire to have a pretty wife. We have all these longings and desires within us. And even as a dancer, we will never be satisfied with dancing the same material over and over. And I don't care how it's put together, where you do a right and left through, where you do a square through, where you do a past the ocean, we are going to look for something different. How we do that to our dancers is the thing that counts. If we do it with care, we don't need all these programs. We don't need 200 or 300 or 400 moves. I don't care how many you count going up to the top of A1, A2. You can teach all those moves, yes. But do you really need them to give that type of variety? Last night I saw callers here dancing, and I'll use one, lead to the left seesaw. How many remember the fun they had trying to do that? I was sitting on the sidelines, and as callers, they went all over the place. I saw them in a back-up elementar. You know, they shoot that star full around into an slip the clutch to a do paso. How many went out for the do paso and turned by the right hand? Be honest. Raise your hand. Callers lie. I saw 3 squares and not one of you did it right. So we have that ability to keep the interest of our dancers. We have a mainstream program. Sure, we have a plus program, but do we need to, as individuals, do we really need that to keep the interest of the dancer? And I think that's where the problem is. We are not doing our homework. We're allowing an ego drive, not just on ourselves, but on our dancers as well. They want to aspire to be better than the person they're dancing with. And we have to give them that ability to think they're doing it.
Nasser, and then we're going to wrap it up here.
Had a friend of mine, Nasser Sugar from Shreveport, Louisiana. A friend of mine invited me to the bowling alley, and I'd never bowled before, and I got pretty good at it. And he said, you don't want to bowl like that no more. You want to bowl at this other lane. It's longer, longer lane. I got pretty good at that. He said, that's no fun. This other lane has 12 pins instead of 10. And I got good at that. So now you need to go to the lane that has 12 pins. It's longer, and it's slanted. Finally got used to that, and then I got good at that. And he showed me the lane that has 12 pins, and it has 12 pins. It's longer, it's slanted, plus 3 pins you can't see. So I'm going home. I just wanted to bowl.
John, Jerry? Jerry, you want to talk? John?
Just one other comment that I would like to make. This day has really been nice. This convention has been nice to this point because of this program, this debate that we had right here. Reminds me of the old days. Those of you who were not with us when we first began at CALLERLAB, we would have knockdown dragouts out in the hall like you wouldn't believe, and then get in a room and I mean go at it tooth and toenail. And
for the benefit of the tape, the day isn't over yet.
I don't recall anybody yanking your chains. Your name's just penciled in. You can be erased. But anyway, it was really a lot of fun to build into a situation like this. And so I'm really glad that Jerry came up with the idea and that Mike jumped in on it. And I appreciate being a part of it. We need to generate more things like this in our organization, and it creates discussion and it creates interest. And the think tanks and the talk sessions, and let's just do some more of it.
That's right. Remember, you guys, we're talking about an issue here. We're not talking about personal things. We shouldn't go out and punch each other out in the hallway or never speak to each other again. This is the kind of thing that we're all looking to remedy a situation that we perceive as not being an ideal situation. How many think that we ought to develop, again, an ad hoc committee to look at the program situation? All right? How many of you would be willing to invite another organization, the other caller organization, to work with us and put things together? Excellent, excellent. I think there's enough Board of Governor members here that we stop and we sit down and we try to work something out. Tony?
My name is Martin Mallard. Putting my name in magic marker. We can form an ad hoc committee to study this. We can make it happen as of now. If you guys would like to see an ad hoc committee, I feel since that's one of the privileges of being chairman, I can tell you that we will form an ad hoc committee to study this for you. If that's what this body votes to do, we can do that right now. And I will appoint perhaps John and Jerry.
You forget I don't like this man.
I will be sure that John and Jerry are both on there. Should any of you guys like to be on that committee, please get with me sometime today, and I'll see that you're on that committee.
Very good. Thank you all for attending. Have a good rest of the convention, okay? Okay.
Mike? Jerry? Good show, man. Enjoy.
That's right. Have a whole group together.
Jerry, I hope
hope you get it accomplished. God damn it, we need something.
Make a headway now.
We need something.
Let's get it buried.
I appreciate it.
No good, no bad.
I hope I backed up a little bit.
That's right. Your survey comment.